The exact moment in time when I discovered that the entire planet was being lied to and was put upon a spell to keep us unaware of it was you said Jay-Z knows the truth, but he chose sides with evil in order to be accepted in the corporate.
No fear in my heart, about speaking my mind and letting people know what time it is. There's no reason for me to fear because it's really nothing. There's nothing they can do besides kill me, and I'm not afraid of that.
While serving time, Prodigy from Mobb Deep wrote powerful letters from his prison cell. In them, he accused Jay-Z of turning his back on the truth to chase wealth, calling him a sellout. Prodigy claimed the system uses music and culture to keep black communities in check. 7 years later, he died in a Las Vegas hospital under circumstances that raised serious questions.
To the Clark County Medical Examiner, Prodigy, one half of Mobb Deep, choked on an egg while at the hospital getting treated for a flare.
Before he passed, Prodigy was openly calling out deep-rooted corruption. He said police once tried to pressure him into planting evidence on 50 Cent. He also exposed how the entertainment industry allegedly uses artists to hurt their own communities. For Prodigy, telling the truth came at a cost. He believed it made him a target.
Does he let you in his car? Does he let you in his house? Would you be willing maybe to drop some in his car or maybe drop a gun in his car and then give us a call?
Even Prince, the legendary musician, seemed to understand the same forces at work before his own untimely and suspicious death.
Well, it's not your game. You didn't make the rules, so everything comes hard. And as long as you're signed to a contract, you're going to take a minority share of the winnings. A select few of us will do well. The majority will not.
Both men made it to the top, used their voices to challenge powerful systems, and both passed away under unclear circumstances. Prodigy's final words could explain why outspoken voices often get silenced. He wasn't just another artist chasing headlines. In 1996, he had what he described as a spiritual awakening that changed his whole perspective. It all started when he was in his Queens apartment, reading a book called Leviathan 666 by Dr. Malachi York. Dr. York wasn't just an author. He led a spiritual community in Brooklyn that explored the roots of religion, politics, and power. The message? Much of what we've been taught is meant to keep us unaware. Once Prodigy connected the dots, everything he shared afterwards started to make sense.
The main thing that woke me up to it was a writer named Dr. York, a spiritual teacher from Brooklyn. He had a whole community over in Bushwick, on Bushwick Avenue, called The Answer Allah.
After finishing the book, Prodigy broke down in tears, not from fear, but from finally seeing how deeply his own community had been misled. In a letter from prison, he wrote, "I was crying for all of humanity, but mostly for my black people. I realize it's all a sham: government, religion, politics, the IRS, the Federal Reserve." He believed everything was designed to keep people mentally trapped and obedient. But what shook him even more was what happened to those who tried to share this truth. Dr. Malachi York, the man behind the book that opened Prodigy's eyes, ended up sentenced to 135 years in prison on charges Prodigy believed were made up. Even worse, Prodigy claimed that York's own son, who was involved in the rap industry, helped bring him down to protect his own career. That's when Prodigy started seeing bigger patterns, ones most people never notice. He believed major names in hip-hop had access to the same knowledge, but chose not to speak up. In his eyes, the biggest example was Jay-Z. According to Prodigy, both Jay-Z and his mentor Jay-Z were raised in Dr. York's spiritual community in Brooklyn. They knew exactly what York had taught about power and manipulation, but instead of using their platform to educate, they followed the money and stayed silent. In fact, Prodigy pointed to the old Jay-Z Originators video, where Jay-Z and Jay-Z were seen holding up Dr. York's pictures, wearing his clothing, and even using his symbols.
Jay-Z conceals the truth from the black community and promotes the lifestyle of the beast instead.
For Prodigy, this wasn't just hip-hop drama. This was personal. He felt betrayed by people who had the chance to uplift their community, but chose fame and wealth instead. He saw Jay-Z as the ultimate example of someone who knew the truth, but decided to support the very system he once questioned. In one of his letters, Prodigy wrote, "I have so much fire in my heart that I will relentlessly go after Jay-Z, the Illuminati, and any evil that exists until my light is put out. He knew that speaking out could make him a target, but he didn't care. He had gone from rapping about the streets to waking people up about a system designed to control their minds. And once he saw the truth, there was no turning back. From 1996 onward, this became his mission. Even though he understood what happened to others who tried to do the same, he kept pushing forward. That boldness may have made him a threat to something far bigger than music. And here's where things get even more real. In October 2007, Prodigy and producer Alchemist got pulled over, and police found a gun in Prodigy's car. He called it his party pistol. But what happened next showed him how the system really works. While he sat in a holding cell, law enforcement made a move that opened his eyes to the real power game.
Different police started pulling me out my cell. The arresting officers, the ATF, different detectives from that precinct. And, the first ones that pulled me out my cell, they asked me if I can help them solve crime. They do this to everybody, get you to snitch on somebody.
After Prodigy was arrested, it wasn't just regular police questioning him. Different branches of law enforcement started pulling him out. Local cops, ATF agents, and detectives. One by one, they tried to pressure him into becoming an informant. At first, it sounded like the usual routine, help us solve crimes. But when that didn't work, their real intentions started to show.
They say, yo, look, really, we just want to know about 50 Cent. We know you down with G Unit. We want something on 50.
This is when Prodigy's street smarts kicked in. He realized they weren't just trying to get information. They were actually revealing their bigger strategy. So instead of shutting down, he pretended to go along with it just to learn more. And what they offered, it wasn't just cooperation. It was flat-out criminal conspiracy. They were asking him to get involved in setups, to play a role in something far more dangerous than he expected.
Would you be willing maybe, does he let you in his car? Does he let you in his house? Would you be willing maybe to drop some drugs in his car or maybe drop a gun in his car?
Imagine this. Law enforcement agents try and convince a rapper to plant guns or drugs in another rapper's car, just so they can arrest him. That's what happened to Prodigy. He said they wanted him to help frame 50 Cent. But here's the twist. 50 wasn't doing anything illegal. He was all business, totally clean. That's why they couldn't build a case on him through normal means. And that made them angry. Prodigy described how different law enforcement teams, even high-level ATF agents, came in shifts to interrogate him, all trying to break him. Their goal? Get him to set up 50 Cent. But Prodigy didn't fold. He told them straight up, I'll do my time, but I'm not betraying anyone. And in that moment, he saw exactly how the system works. It's not just about law and order. It's about targeting successful, independent black men and manufacturing crimes when they can't find any. To Prodigy, this proved what it always said. The system is built to divide and control. When they can't take someone down directly, they'll pressure friends or insiders to help do it for them. And when Prodigy refused, then exposed all of it publicly, he became a much bigger target. But then came a surprising connection. Prince and Prodigy, two artists from different worlds who both spoke the truth, and both died under strange circumstances.
We in the studio, one of my homeboys was like, yo, Prince is out there. I was like, get the out of here. He was like, hell yeah, I'll bring that nigga in here. He mad cool. He brought Prince in the studio.
Their link started at Electric Lady Studios. Havoc from Mobb Deep was working on a beat when someone told him Prince was outside. At first, he thought it was a joke, but it was real. Prince walked in quietly, no entourage. He listened to the track, asked if he could jump in, and added keyboard parts to what later became Thou Shalt Not Kill with Snoop Dogg. Then, just like that, he walked out. No credit, no spotlight. Just music. But what truly connected Prince and Prodigy was bigger than beats. It was their fight against the industry's control. Prince famously wrote Slave on his face and took on his record label to own his masters. Prodigy was calling out how rappers were used to push toxic lifestyles into their own communities. They could have stayed quiet and rich, but both chose truth over comfort. And then, both were gone. Prince reportedly died from a fentanyl overdose, but People close to him say he avoided drugs and had been speaking out about industry corruption. Prodigy died from what was described as accidental choking in a hospital while under supervision.
Still had no fear in my heart, about speaking my mind and letting people know what time it is. There's no reason for me to fear because it's really nothing. There's nothing they can do besides kill me, and I'm not afraid of that,
One of Prodigy's final quotes hits different when you realize how soon it came before his death. He knew the risks of speaking out and accepted them. Both Prince and Prodigy had a deep spiritual side, too. Prince had become a Jehovah's Witness and spoke about spiritual warfare in the entertainment world. Prodigy, inspired by Dr. York's teachings, believed in exposing hidden truths no matter the cost. The timing of their deaths raised questions. Both were at a point where they had nothing to lose and everything to reveal. Prince had just regained control of his music and was preparing to speak out. Prodigy was more outspoken than ever. And then, silence.
God always wins at the end of the day. You know what I mean? Good always gonna beat evil at the end of the day, man. No matter how bad it's looking, you know what I mean? No matter what's going on, you know what I mean? Good is always gonna win.
The connection between Prince and Prodigy wasn't just about music. It was about using their success to speak out against a system that helped build them up. They knew it came with risks. Both men understood that speaking the truth could turn them into targets, but they did it anyway. And tragically, both lost their lives under suspicious circumstances. Their deaths now serve as powerful reminders to other artists. When you push back too hard against the people in charge, there could be serious consequences. Now let's look at the final days of Prodigy's life, because the official story doesn't quite add up. He checked into Spring Valley Medical Center on June 18th, 2017, due to complications from sickle cell anemia, something he had dealt with for years. It wasn't the first time he'd needed hospital care, and he knew how to manage it. But what happened over the next 2 days raised serious red flags. The official cause of death? Accidental choking on an egg. And this happened while he was receiving treatment, in a hospital, under supervision. That alone brings up questions. How does someone choke to death in a medical facility, surrounded by trained staff? According to a lawsuit from his family, the hospital made multiple serious errors. They failed to monitor his oxygen levels continuously, which is standard procedure for breathing issues. They didn't keep his 4-line working, another basic part of hospital care. And when he began choking, no staff were around to help. This isn't about a minor mistake. These are major lapses in patient safety. Think about it. Hospitals have call buttons, machines that track your vitals, and people on duty 24/7. If Prodigy was found unresponsive, it likely means nobody was watching him when it mattered most. And here's the chilling part. Just before he passed, Prodigy was publicly saying he wasn't afraid to die for speaking the truth. He had been consistent in calling out corruption, and he wasn't backing down. Even when it was clear he was under pressure. The timing, the circumstances, the lack of care, all of it has made many fans, friends, and family wonder, was this just a tragic accident or something deeper?
People are definitely being manipulated, you know what I mean? It's a business.
When Prodigy passed away at just 42, the timing didn't sit right with many people. He was still active, still had a powerful voice, and was using his platform to speak out against deep problems in the music industry and beyond. His death felt like the silencing of someone who wasn't afraid to challenge the system. What raised eyebrows even more was how it happened. Prodigy had lived with sickle cell anemia his whole life. He knew how to manage it. So the idea that he suddenly choked on an egg, in a hospital, no less, made people question what really went wrong. His family said he wasn't being properly monitored, even though modern hospitals usually have equipment to alert staff when something's wrong. Either that equipment wasn't there, or it wasn't working. At the time, Prodigy was still speaking publicly about the controversial case of Dr. Malachi York, a man he believed was unfairly targeted. Prodigy was encouraging others to dig deeper, ask questions, and not accept everything at face value. He was helping keep that conversation alive in the hip-hop world. But when he died, the response followed a pattern we've seen before. The media quickly pointed to his health condition and didn't say much about concerns his family raised. There wasn't much coverage or questioning. Just a simple explanation, and then silence. Unfortunately, this isn't new. Anytime someone with a platform starts talking openly about corruption or injustice, they often face serious pushback, and sometimes worse. Take Dr. York, for example. He created a space to educate people, promote unity, and question the systems around them. Then came a federal case filled with questionable evidence, biased judges, and what looked like an unfair trial, ending in a 135-year sentence. Or look at Prince. He was fighting for control over his music, speaking out about industry control, and planning to share more with the public. Then he died from an accidental overdose, even though he had a reputation for being cautious and health conscious. There's a pattern here. Discredit the person, isolate them, then shut them down, whether through the courts or under strange circumstances. Prodigy saw this clearly, and still, he kept speaking up. He knew the risks but refused to stay quiet. In the past, we saw more obvious cases, like Malcolm X or Fred Hampton, where the threats were out in the open. Now, it's more subtle. Health emergencies in hospitals, sudden overdoses, or unexplained heart attacks. It becomes easier to dismiss these losses as unfortunate but unrelated. But for those paying attention, the pattern is hard to ignore. And that's what made Prodigy so powerful and so dangerous to those who didn't want these conversations happening.
Not only will they persecute you, they'll lie on you. They'll fabricate lies. They'll imprison you and create cases around you.
Prodigy's passing didn't just feel tragic. It followed a troubling pattern. He was fearless about speaking out and stayed consistent in his message. People had tried to discredit him before, but it never worked because his integrity never wavered. When that failed, it seems the only way left to silence him was through a medical situation that raised more questions than answers. The way his death was handled also felt familiar. News outlets didn't dig deep. His family's concerns weren't highlighted, and the public was left with a simple explanation that discouraged any further investigation. This isn't just about one artist. It reflects what happens to many who challenge powerful systems. They're often ignored, dismissed, or silenced quietly. Before his passing, Prodigy had been openly discussing the controversial case of Dr. Malachi York, another figure who faced a complex and highly debated legal situation. Prodigy's willingness to speak about this, just like York once did, showed how aware he was of the risks involved. What's important to understand is that Prodigy wasn't just speaking out. He was leading by example. He stood up for what he believed in, even when it put him at risk. That's something many artists don't do, not because they don't care, but because they've seen what can happen to those who go too far. In a world where a few examples can be used to scare the rest into silence, Prodigy stood tall anyway. This makes his story even more important today. Because while the methods of control may have changed, becoming more subtle or technical, the goal is the same: to keep people unaware, divided, and easy to influence. But Prodigy, like Prince and Dr. York, was trying to wake people up. What made Prodigy truly stand out was not just how he died, but what he lived for. In his final interviews, you could hear the clarity in his words. He had figured out how deep the control ran, and he was trying to help others see it too. He had evolved from a hardcore rapper into someone who wanted to educate and empower his community. He used his time in prison to reflect, study, and understand how larger systems worked, and how they affected Black communities specifically. He wasn't chasing headlines. He was uncovering how people were being kept in cycles of confusion and harm. And when he called out big names like Jay-Z, it wasn't about drama. In his eyes, it was about accountability, about choosing to stand for truth, no matter who it made uncomfortable. Prodigy believed that staying silent helped the very systems he wanted to fight against. And he chose to speak, right to the very end.
Jay-Z knows the truth, but he chose sides with evil in order to be accepted in the corporate.
But his message went beyond calling out in.
Prodigy's message went far beyond just calling out big names. He was urging people to wake up. He wanted his community to break free from mental chains, to question the systems around them, and to seek out real knowledge that empowers, not controls. The teachings of Dr. Malachi York gave him a lens to understand how spiritual and psychological manipulation can affect entire communities, especially those already struggling under the weight of inequality. What makes Prodigy's journey so powerful is the courage it took. He knew the history. He'd seen what happened to voices like Dr. York. He understood how systems could quietly silence those who speak up too loudly, yet he still chose to speak, knowing the risks. In one of his letters, he wrote, "I fear nothing and no one. I'm fearless because the truth has set me free from mental enslavement, and I've been empowered by God and the universe." Reading that now feels almost prophetic, especially considering how his life ended not long after. He even said the only thing that could stop him was death, and he wasn't afraid of it. That kind of fearless honesty made him a threat to corruption. When police once tried to get him to plant evidence on 50 Cent, Prodigy refused, even if it meant going to prison. That's the kind of integrity that doesn't just earn respect. It shakes systems built on betrayal and silence. And that's exactly what happened. His reputation couldn't be destroyed by gossip or headlines. Artists who knew him continued to speak highly of him after his passing. His consistency and honesty were hard to deny, and that made him stand out. We may never know exactly what happened in his final moments, but his life tells a clear story. He was evolving into a powerful truth teller, someone who broke free from the narratives that hold people back, and who used his voice to help others do the same. And the fact that he passed away right as his message was gaining more momentum makes many wonder if that message had become too powerful for certain people to ignore. But here's the thing. The truth can't be silenced, even when the people spreading it are. Prodigy, Prince, and Dr. York may no longer be with us, but the ideas they stood for are still alive. They warned us about how control really works, through manipulation, misinformation, and fear. And each of them, in their own way, challenged that. What's left now is for us to listen. Because the systems they tried to expose haven't gone away. They're still working, still pushing back against those who speak up, and still keeping people distracted and divided. That's it for this video. Thanks for watching and stay informed.